I have a shoebox somewhere with ticket stubs in it, and every so often I go through it and I find one from a band that does not exist anymore, and I think the same thing every single time. What actually happened to you? So I went looking. 10 of the greatest bands rock ever produced. 10 endings. And I expected to find musical differences, creative directions, the usual. I found almost none of that, and I need to tell you what I found instead, because it changed how I listened to about 40 records in my house. Number 10. The Police. The first time I heard Synchronicity all the way through, I remember thinking, 3 people cannot possibly be this locked in. It sounds like one nervous system. It sounds like 3 guys who finish each other's sentences. They were not finishing each other's sentences. They were barely speaking. By the time the Police made that record, they were the biggest band on earth. Synchronicity was the 3rd biggest album of 1983, selling 10 million copies worldwide. And Every Breath You Take sat at number 1 on the Hot 100 for 8 straight weeks. That is not a band on the way out. That is a band at absolute altitude. And here is the part I did not know until I started digging. On that album, the one that sounds like Telepathy, the 3 of them recorded their parts in separate rooms. Well, separate rooms, passing the music back and forth, talking through producer Hugh Padgham, because talking to each other directly tended to end badly. And I know how that sounds, but stay with me, because this is the thing that gets me. It did not make the record worse. It made it tighter. All that distance, all that friction, it went straight into the tape. Every gap between those 3 men is a gap you can hear, and the gaps are the reason the songs breathe like that. Sting wanted out. Andy Summers has said Sting was ready to finish the contract and go be the thing all on his own, and that nobody else wanted the band to break up, so they toured it. All of 1983 into 84, biggest shows of their lives. The tour ended in March 1984, and everybody called it a hiatus. It was not a hiatus. That was it. No announcement. No final show billed as a final show. The biggest band in the world simply stopped being a band and let everyone figure it out on their own. And this is where the whole list starts, so let me plant something with you now. I went into this expecting musical differences. What I found over and over was that the music was the last thing standing. The music was fine. The music was great. Everything around the music is what collapsed. Hold on to that, because there is one band coming later where the story behind the split completely changed how I hear the songs, and I think it is going to do the same thing to you. Number 9, Talking Heads.
Who got a match?
Imagine picking up a newspaper and learning your band broke up. Not from a bandmate, not a phone call, a newspaper. Talking Heads. Four people who met as art students and built something nobody had built before. 8 albums, a live film that people are still discovering in theaters. And then, quietly, nothing. A stretch of what everybody called a hiatus after Naked in 1988. Hiatus. There is that word again. You are going to hear it a lot on this list, and I want you to notice how often it means nobody has the conversation. In December 1991, David Byrne told the Los Angeles Times that you could say they had broken up, or call it whatever you liked, one line, in a newspaper interview. Chris France said afterward that they were shocked to find out through the Los Angeles Times, and that as far as they were concerned, the band never really broke up, David just decided to leave. And I sat with that for a minute, because these were not strangers. France and Weymouth and Byrne had known each other since art school. They had shared apartments. They had loaded the same van into the same clubs. Here is the part that actually moved me. Years later, Byrne admitted he was responsible for how ugly the breakup got, and said he could be a little tyrant when he was younger. That is not a man defending himself. That is a man who has thought about it for 30 years. And if you have ever watched a friendship end not from a fight, but from a conversation nobody was willing to start, you know exactly what this is. That is not a rock story. That is a human story with a record deal attached. Some bands explode. Some bands just go quiet in a room where somebody should have said something. This one went quiet. Number 8 went the other way entirely. Loudly, in Paris. Over something so small you will not believe it is the reason. Let's look at the numbers. Only 9% of you are actually subscribed. Honestly, that's tough to see. Our team spends days hunting down archives and verifying every single fact just to tell these stories right. If you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly part of the community, so please hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps us immensely. Now, for those already subscribed, very few of you have made the jump to our membership, and that's a hard pill to swallow because you're the ones who know our value best. If this channel has moved you or inspired you, consider joining. It's the price of one coffee, but it's the literal fuel for this channel. Let's keep this alive together. Back to the story. Number 8, Oasis. Okay, I love this one. Not because it is happy, it is not, but because it is so perfectly ridiculously them. You know this band. We all know this band. There is a song of theirs that has been played at every wedding, every pub, every acoustic set, by every kid with a guitar since 1995. You know the song, but where the ending came from is a story that is somehow both hilarious and genuinely sad. By 2009, Noel and Liam Gallagher had already had a fistfight before their world tour and were traveling to shows in separate vehicles. Two brothers, separate cars. And here is the trigger. Not the music, not the set list. Noel had objected to Liam aggressively promoting his clothing brand, Pretty Green, to Oasis fans, an advert in a tour program. That is it. That is the fuse. August 28, 2009. Rock and Seine, Paris. A dressing room row moments before their headline slot. Noel would later describe his brother grabbing his guitar and wielding it like an axe. Noel has said the tour manager came in and said 5 minutes, and they broke up within that 5 minutes. 30,000 people were outside waiting. The statement went out that night. It was with some sadness and great relief that he was quitting. He added that he simply could not go on working with Liam a day longer. Sadness and relief, in the same sentence. I have read that line probably 50 times and it still lands. Because anyone who has ever walked away from something they loved knows both of those feelings arrive together. And here is what nobody talks about enough. The thing that made Oasis great is the exact thing that ended them. That friction between two brothers who could not be in a room together and could not be apart. That is the sound. Take it away, and you do not have Oasis, you have a very good rock band. You cannot separate the fuel from the fire, nobody ever has. Next is Two Brothers again, but this time the thing that broke was the harmony itself. And I have to be careful how I tell you this one because it genuinely got to me. Number 7, the Everly Brothers. There is no sound in American music like two brothers singing. Nothing comes close. And I think that is because you cannot rehearse it. You have to be born into it. Don and Phil Everly practically invented the thing. Every harmony group after them was chasing. The Beatles studied them. Simon and Garfunkel studied them. The Beach Boys studied them. By the end of the 60s, though, tastes had moved. The British invasion, the folk rock boom, the counterculture, and their clean-cut image was getting left behind. Which brings us to 2 shows at Knott's Berry Farm in Buena Park, California, July 13th and 14th, 1973, announced as the last before a break. The 13th went fine. On the 14th, Don came out drunk, slurring words, forgetting lyrics. Warren Zevon was playing keyboards that night. He had seen Don perform with a 103-degree fever and never heard him hit a sour note. That night, he said, it was embarrassing. The crowd started jeering.
I can make you mine.
Don turned on them, and on his brother. Phil slammed his guitar down, smashed it, and told the promoter as he walked off that he could not go back on stage with that man again. You just winced. I know you did, because I did the same thing when I read it.
Dream, dream, dream.
And then Don tried to keep going, alone. When somebody asked where Phil had gone, he said the Everly brothers died 10 years ago. He later called it one of the saddest days of his life. He also said it was the only time he had ever been drunk on stage.
Dream, 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 dream.
Here is what actually broke them, and it is not alcohol. Phil later said what they needed was a long vacation, that too many people were making too much money off them, keeping them going, and they should have rested but could not. They were never allowed to stop. That is the whole thing.
I can make you mine.
Two brothers whose entire gift was intimacy, run like an industrial operation for 16 straight years, until the only thing left between them was the job. Between that night and the early 80s, they reportedly saw each other once, at their father's funeral. And the thing is, the records are still perfect. They never got worse, not once.
Gee whiz, I'm dreaming my.
Number 6, The Smiths. This is the one I have told the most people about in real life. Because the split is not the story. The split is the setup. 5 years. That is all the Smiths got. 1982 to 1987. And in that window, they became the most important British guitar band of their generation. Johnny Marr was exhausted. Genuinely exhausted. He has said he was only 24 when they split and was heartbroken. That he felt forced into it. He left in 1987, and that was that. Here is the part I did not know until I started digging, and I wish I had known sooner. Behind that band, from the beginning, there was a number. Morrissey and Marr each took 40% of the performing and recording royalties. Drummer Mike Joyce and bassist Andy Rourke each got 10, 40, 40, 10, 10, on everything. Joyce's barrister later argued that it was not until after the band split in 1987 that his client discovered he was only getting 10%. Sit with that. 4 men in a van. Same stages, same hours, same years. And 2 of them did not know the arithmetic. In March 1989, Joyce and Rourke started legal proceedings, arguing they were equal partners, entitled to 25% each of the band's profits, outside songwriting and publishing. Rourke, heavily in debt, settled almost immediately for £83,000 plus 10%. Joyce did not settle. The case reached the High Court in December 1996, and after a 7-day hearing, the court ruled in his favor, roughly £1 million in back payments and 25% going forward. 9 years after the band ended, they were still in a room together, just a different kind of room. And this is the thing about the Smiths that nobody talks about enough.
Why do I give valuable time to...
The music never soured, not 1 second of it. You can put on any of those records right now and none of the courtroom is in there. But the reason there has never been a reunion is not artistic. It never was. It is a document nobody explained to 2 of the 4 people who signed it. Some records do not just sound good. They know something about you. And it kills me that the men who made those records could not be told the truth about their own bank statements. Number 5, Guns N' Roses. There is a version of this story everybody knows. 2 guys stopped getting along, which is true. It is also not the reason. By the mid-90s, Guns N' Roses had shed almost everybody. Steven Adler was fired in 1990. Izzy Stradlin left the following year. That left 3 original partners, Axl Rose, Slash, and Duff McKagan. 3 trademark applications for the name were registered to a partnership of those 3 men. The first 2 filed in 1992, around the Use Your Illusion era. Now here is where it gets contested, and I want to be careful, because there are two accounts. Slash has claimed that during the Use Your Illusion tour in 1992, Axl refused to go on stage one night unless the band signed the name rights over to him, and that they signed because Slash did not think he would go on otherwise. Rose has flatly denied it, calling it made up, with not one thread of truth in it. He has also said he took the step he took to salvage guns, not steal it. Two men, two completely different memories of the same night. And I am not going to tell you which one is true because I do not know, and neither does anybody else who was not in that room. But look at what everybody agrees on. On October 31st, 1996, Rose confirmed Slash had left. Slash has said the final straw was a revised contract drawn up by Rose's lawyers, and that it was not so much him leaving as him declining to continue in the new band Axl was now at the helm of. A contract. Again. And I know what you are thinking right now, because I thought it too. How does the biggest hard rock band in the world come down to paperwork? Because a band is two things at once. It is 5 people who love the same noise, and it is a business entity with assets. And nobody tells you in the garage that those two things will eventually have to be reconciled. Slash has since said a lot of what pitted him and Axl against each other in the 90s had to do with management issues, and that without that element, the two of them get along great. They get along great. Now, 20 years and one reunion later. Number 4, the band.
A man might find a bed. He just grinned and shook.
I need to tell you something about The Last Waltz, because I have loved that film since I was a teenager, and finding out what was actually happening in that room genuinely changed it for me. Thanksgiving Day.
Looking for a place to hide. When I saw old Tom.
November 25th, 1976. Winterland Ballroom, San Francisco. 5,400 people, a full film crew, and a guest list that included Dylan, Muddy Waters, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young, Van Morrison, Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, and more. The greatest farewell concert ever staged. That is not hyperbole. Nobody has topped it. Here is what I did not understand for years. 4 of the 5 men on that stage did not want to be having a farewell concert. Robertson had grown to loathe the road and had his sights on film soundtrack work. The rest of the group were not keen on the idea of a final show at all, and underneath that was the real wound. Levin Helm's objection came down to Robertson holding the lion's share of the songwriting royalties, while Helm was convinced many of those songs had been written collaboratively. Helm, Danko, Manuel, and Hudson felt the songs came out of the room, Robbie's lyrics on top of what the 5 of them had built together, while the credit and the publishing sat with one man. And publishing is where the money is. It is always where the money is. Helm hated the film. In his 1993 autobiography, he called it a disaster, and he believed it was structured to make Robertson look like the leader of the band. And afterward, when Robertson booked studio time, the others simply did not turn up. The 4 of them started performing as the band again in 1983, pointedly without him. Robertson said later that Levin got the idea he had hijacked the narrative of the band and never got over it, and he called that sad. He also said Levin was probably the most consistent of all of them, that he came out every night and sang those songs better than anybody could, and that is the part that gets me. Both of those things are true. Robbie wrote them, Levin made them real, and there is no line on a royalty statement for made them real. Number 3, Creedence Clearwater Revival, 4 years. That is how long Creedence Clearwater Revival were an active hit-making band.
Not much longer would you be mine.
4 years, and they gave us a catalog most bands would need 30 years to build. 11 top 20 hits in under 4 years. John Fogerty wrote them, sang them, produced them, arranged them, and that is the problem in one sentence. His brother Tom wanted to write and sing, and John did not make room for him. The friction eventually pushed Tom out. He quit in 1971. Now here is where the story goes somewhere I did not expect. You would assume the remaining 3 carried on until they burned out. They did not. What actually happened is that John Fogerty gave Doug Clifford and Stu Cook exactly what they had been asking for. And he did it as a weapon. By Cook's account, Fogerty told them that on the next album, the two of them would write a third and sing a third, and he would just play rhythm guitar on their tracks. Cook said that would not be a Creedence album and the fans would not be happy. Fogerty told him that was how it was going to be or he would quit. Clifford has called it an ultimatum. Mardi Gras came out on April 11, 1972. Rolling Stone called it the worst album ever made by a major rock band. On October 16, 1972, Cook and Clifford issued a joint statement. Creedence Clearwater Revival was over. Cook has said that in retrospect they should have finished the band right then, that artistically the album was a mistake, but at the time they thought they were saving the band. Here is the real reason, and it is bigger than John Fogerty's ego. By 1972, Fogerty was unhappy with the group format and with the demanding contract he was locked into with Fantasy Records. Those label disputes then dragged him through the courts for years. His old label ended up owning the rights to his own songs. He was fighting the label. He was fighting his brother. He was fighting the two guys in his rhythm section. And a man fighting on three fronts eventually stops fighting. Nobody wins a fight like that. You just eventually run out of the thing you were protecting. Number 2, Pink Floyd. This is the one I mentioned at the beginning, and I told you, it changes the songs. You know this band. Everybody knows this band. There is a Pink Floyd record in almost every house I have ever been in that had records in it. But sit with me for a minute, because what actually ended them is not creative differences. It is a question that sounds almost silly until you realize how much rides on it. What is a band? Roger Waters left in December 1985. He assumed that without him it could not continue. He was wrong. In October 1986, he went to the High Court to have the band formally dissolved, declaring it a spent force creatively. And here is the exchange that I have not been able to stop thinking about since I found it. Waters himself described it. He went to the lawyers and said, "Listen, this is not Pink Floyd anymore." And they told him that was irrelevant. It was a label. It had commercial value. He could not simply declare that it would cease to exist. He called it one of the few times the legal profession taught him something. Read that again. It is a label and it has commercial value. The name outranked the man who made it mean something. The name was an asset with a market price, and no amount of authorship could unmake that. A settlement was reached in December 1987. Gilmour and Mason kept the name, and Waters would receive royalties for his past contributions they continued to use. The deal was done in a Christmas-time meeting on Gilmour's houseboat. Now, here is why this one changed the records for me. Pink Floyd spent their entire career making music about alienation, about walls between people, about the machinery that grinds down the individual. And then they ended by discovering that they themselves were the machinery. That 4 words on an album sleeve had become a piece of property with more legal standing than the friendship that produced it. Waters later said plainly that he was wrong to sue. The two sides eventually stood on a stage together again at Live 8 in 2005. But the answer to the question is in. A band is not 5 friends. A band is a trademark. And the friends are just the people who happen to build it. Number 1. The Beatles. You were told it was Yoko. Your parents were told it was Yoko. Somebody's uncle is still saying it at a barbecue this weekend. It was not Yoko. It was an accountant. Brian Epstein died in 1967, and the Beatles, who had relied on him completely, ran into a run of cash flow problems. They had built Apple Cores and they were bleeding money through it, so they needed a manager. And here is where the band actually ended, years before anybody announced anything. Paul McCartney wanted his future father-in-law Lee Eastman and brother-in-law John Eastman, both entertainment lawyers. Lennon, Harrison, and Starr were worried the Eastmans would favor McCartney, so they pushed for Alan Klein, the hard-nosed businessman then managing the Rolling Stones. 3-1. Because it was 3 against 1, they signed with Clyde, to McCartney's chagrin. And here is the detail that stopped me cold. McCartney refused to sign the paperwork making Clyde manager. It did not matter. He was outvoted. The most successful songwriting partnership in history, and one half of it was outvoted on who would handle the money. And then it curdled exactly the way you would expect. McCartney was sent a remixed version of one of his own songs with harps, horns, orchestra, and a choir added. Nobody had asked him. It arrived with a note from Clyde saying he thought the changes were necessary. Imagine that. You write it, you play it, and you hear the finished version at the same time as the public does. On December 31st, 1970, Paul McCartney sued John Lennon, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr in the London High Court, seeking to dissolve the partnership. McCartney described it afterward as a trauma, that not only was the group broken up, but these 3 men, his truest friends since childhood, had become his firmest enemies overnight. He said this group was his school, his family, his life. The suit took more than 4 years to get through the courts. They did not officially disband until January 1975. And here is the ending nobody puts in the documentary. He was right. Years later, it became clear McCartney was correct about Clyde, and even Lennon admitted it before he died. The other 3 eventually soured on him too. By 1977, all their litigation with Clyde was settled. Paul McCartney spent decades being blamed for breaking up the Beatles by people who did not know he was the one trying to stop them from being robbed. He has said the backlash was hurtful, that he almost blamed himself. That is the real reason. Not a woman, not creative differences, not growing apart. 4 men who had been together since they were teenagers were handed a business they did not understand, and the first serious disagreement they ever had about it was the one they could not survive.